Christocentric Mysticism. Mysticism in different religious traditions. Mysticism transcends individual religious boundaries and finds a place in many of the world's major faith traditions. It is characterized by a direct personal experience of the divine or the ultimate reality. Here's a look at how mysticism manifests in different religions, along with some notable examples. Christian mysticism. It focuses on the direct experience of God, often through contemplative prayer and ascetic practices, and emphasizes the union with God and the inner transformation from this union. Saint Teresa of Avila, 1515 to 1582. A Spanish Carmelite nun and mystic, Teresa experienced profound visions and spiritual raptures. Her writings, such as The Interior Castle, describe the soul's journey through various stages of prayer leading to a divine union. Islamic mysticism, Sufism. Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam. It seeks a deeper, more intimate connection through practices like dhikr, remembrance, poetry, and music. Rumi, 0712-73, a Persian poet and Sufi mystic, Rumi's works, including his collection of poems, the Masnavi, emphasize the theme of divine love and the soul's longing for union with God. Hindu mysticism. Hindu mysticism is deeply rooted in that man's soul. And Brahman, ultimate reality. Practices such as meditation, yoga, and devotion, Bhakti, are pathways to experiencing the divine. Ramana Maharshi, 1879 to 1950. An Indian sage, Ramana advocated the practice of self-inquiry, Atma Vichara, to realize the true self. Atman and his teachings continue to influence spiritual seekers worldwide. Buddhist mysticism. Buddhist mysticism often centers on attaining enlightenment, nirvana, through meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living. It involves transcending the ego and experiencing the true nature of reality. Milarepa, Tibetan 2 to 1135. Milarepa's life story is one of intense spiritual practice and enlightenment. His songs and teachings, recorded in The Life of Milarepa, inspire many to pursue spiritual liberation. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the mystical tradition within Judaism. It focuses on understanding the nature of God, the universe, and the soul, and often involves the study of sacred texts and mystical practices. Isaac Luria, 1534 to 1572. Known as the Ari, Luria's teachings in the Lurianic Kabbalah introduced concepts like tzimtzum, contraction, and Shebrit Hakalim, shattering of the vessels, which explain the process of creation and the soul's journey. Taoist mysticism. Taoist mysticism seeks harmony with the Tao, the way, through practices like Tai Chi. Qigong. Meditation and the study of classical texts like the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu, 6th century BCA. Traditionally credited as the author of the Tao Te Ching, Lao's teachings emphasize living by the Tao, achieving balance and experiencing unity with the cosmos. Indigenous mysticism. Many indigenous traditions worldwide have mystical elements that connect the individual with the natural world and the spiritual realms through rituals, visions, and shamanic practices. Shamans act as intermediaries between various indigenous cultures' human and spiritual worlds. They engage in rituals and ceremonies to heal, gain insight, and connect with the divine forces of nature. These examples highlight the rich diversity of mystical experiences across different religious traditions, demonstrating a universal human yearning for direct, transformative encounters with the divine or ultimate reality. Mysticism inspires and guides spiritual seekers toward a more profound understanding and union with the sacred. Union with God Union with God is the ultimate goal of many mystical traditions. It represents a profound and intimate connection with the divine, characterized by the dissolution of the ego and the experience of oneness with the divine presence. In John of the Cross, describes the mystical marriage or transforming union as the highest form of spiritual relationship with God, where the soul is united with God in love. Meister Eckhart speaks of the birth of God in the soul, a state where the soul and God become one. Contemplation. Contemplation is a deep, reflective form of prayer or meditation that seeks to still the mind and open the heart to divine presence. It goes beyond verbal prayer to an inner silence and awareness of God. Christian mysticism, the cloud of unknowing. A classic text on contemplative prayer, instructing practitioners to seek God through love and longing in a state of unknowing. Teresa of Avila describes the stages of contemplative prayer in the interior castle, leading to the innermost seventh mansion of union with God. Direct experience. Direct experience refers to the immediate and personal encounter with the divine, unmediated by intellectual reasoning or external rituals. It's often described as an intuitive, transformative moment of spiritual insight. Christian mysticism. Julian of Norwich had a series of divine visions, known as showings, providing direct experiences of God's love and grace. Bernadette of Lourdes experienced visions of the Virgin Mary, leading to establishing the pilgrimage site at Lourdes. The interconnection of these concepts. In mystical traditions, these key concepts are deeply interconnected. Union with God is often achieved through contemplation, leading to direct experiences that transform the individual's spiritual life. The journey of mysticism typically involves moving through stages of contemplative practice, leading to more profound experiences of divine union. These concepts provide a framework for understanding mystics' rich and profound experiences across religious traditions, emphasizing a personal and transformative relationship with the divine. Historical foundations. Early Christian mysticism is rooted in the experiences and teachings of the early followers of Jesus Christ. It encompasses the time of Jesus in the first few centuries, focusing on God's personal and direct experience. Mystical experiences in the New Testament. Many passages in the New Testament describe mystical experiences, often presented as proof of the miraculous powers of Jesus and his disciples. For example, the Gospel of John contains numerous mystical references, such as Jesus' prayer for unity among believers, John 17, 20-21. Several prominent figures in the New Testament are considered mystics. John the Evangelist, also known as John the Apostle, and St. John the Divine, and St. Paul are notable examples. John's writings, especially the book of Revelation, are filled with mystical imagery and visions. In the 3rd and 4th centuries, many Christian ascetics retreated to the deserts of Egypt and Syria to live a life of prayer and contemplation. These early monastics, the Desert Fathers and Mothers, practiced rigorous asceticism and sought a direct encounter with God through solitude and silence. Early Christian mystics often described their experiences in theological terms, emphasizing the union with God and the transformative power of divine love. This mystical theology laid the foundation for later developments in Christian mysticism. Notable figures. John the Evangelist, as one of Jesus' 12 apostles. John's writings, particularly the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation, contain profound mystical insights and visions. St. Paul's conversion experience on the road to Damascus and subsequent theological writings reflect a deep mystical understanding of God's presence and action in the world. Desert Fathers and Mothers. Figures like Anthony the Great and Macrina the Younger exemplify the early Christian mystical tradition. emphasizing the importance of solitude, prayer, and ascetic practices. Influence on later mysticism. Early Christian mystics' practices and theological insights had a lasting impact on the development of Christian mysticism. Their emphasis on direct experience, contemplation, and union with God continued to inspire later mystics and spiritual seekers throughout the history of Christianity. Mysticism in the Hebrew Scriptures, or the Old Testament, encompasses various spiritual experiences and encounters with the divine. These mystical elements are woven throughout the narratives, laws, and poetry of the Hebrew Scripture. Key aspects of mysticism in the Hebrew Scriptures. Prophetic visions. Many prophets in the Hebrew Scriptures had mystical experiences where they received visions and messages directly from God. These experiences often involved profound symbolic imagery and direct communication with the divine. Theophanies. Theophany refers to a visible manifestation of God to a human. These divine encounters are described in several instances, where God appears in various forms to communicate with individuals or the entire nation of Israel. Wisdom literature. Books like Psalms, Proverbs, and Job contain poetic reflections and meditations on the nature of God, the universe, and human existence. These texts often explore mystical themes such as the fear of the Lord, divine wisdom, and the search for meaning. In Isaiah 6, the prophet Isaiah describes a vision where he sees the Lord seated on a high and exalted throne, surrounded by seraphim. This encounter leads to his commissioning as a prophet. Ezekiel 1 recounts a dramatic vision of God's glory, featuring a chariot with 4 living creatures and wheels within wheels. This vision marks the beginning of Ezekiel's prophetic ministry. In Exodus 3, Moses encounters God as a burning bush not consumed by the flames. This theophany leads to God's commissioning of Moses to deliver the Israelites from Egypt. Jacob's ladder. In Genesis 28, Jacob dreams of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending on it. In this vision, God reiterates his covenant promises to Jacob. The Psalms reflect profound mystical experiences of God's presence and majesty. For example, Psalm 23 speaks of the Lord as a shepherd who guides and protects, providing a sense of intimate communion with God. Proverbs often personifies wisdom as a divine attribute, inviting believers to seek a deeper understanding of God's ways. Proverbs 8, for instance, depicts wisdom as being present with God at the world's creation. Impact on later Jewish mysticism. The mystical themes and experiences in the Hebrew Scriptures laid the groundwork for later developments in Jewish mysticism, such as Kabbalah. These texts' rich imagery, symbolic visions, and profound theological reflections continue to inspire and shape mystical thought within Judaism. These examples highlight the deep mystical currents within the Hebrew Scriptures, revealing a tradition rich in divine encounters and spiritual insights. Mystical traditions in other world religions. Various world religions contain mystical traditions, each with unique characteristics and practices. Here's an overview of mystical traditions in some of the major world religions. Sufism, Islamic mysticism. Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam that seeks a personal and intimate connection with Allah, God. It emphasizes love, devotion, and the inner transformation of the soul. Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet and Sufi mystic. Rumi's poetry, particularly the Masnavi, is filled with themes of divine love and the soul's journey toward union with God. Hindu mysticism. Hindu mysticism is centered on Atman, the soul, and Brahman, the ultimate reality. Practices such as yoga, meditation, and devotion, bhakti, are means to experience the divine. Ramana Maharshi. an Indian sage known for his teachings on self-inquiry, Atma Vichara, to realize the true self and its unity with Brahman. Buddhist mysticism. Buddhist mysticism focuses on attaining enlightenment, nirvana through meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living. It involves transcending the ego and experiencing the true nature of reality. Milarepa, a Tibetan yogi and poet. Milarepa's life story and songs are a testament to his intense spiritual practice and attainment of enlightenment. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the mystical tradition within Judaism that seeks to understand the nature of God, the universe, and the soul. It involves the study of sacred texts and mystical practices. Isaac Luria, known for Lurianic Kabbalah. Luria's teachings explain the creation process and the soul's journey through concepts like tzimtzum, contraction, and Shivert Hakalian, shattering of the vessels. Taoist mysticism. Taoist mysticism aims for harmony with the Tao, the way through practice like Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, and the study of classical texts like the Tao Te Ching. Laozi, the semi-legendary author of the Tao Te Ching. Laozi's teachings emphasize living according to the Tao, achieving balance, and experiencing unity with the cosmos. Christian mysticism. Christian mysticism focuses on the direct experience of God, often through contemplative prayer and ascetic practices. It emphasizes the union with God and the inner transformation from this union. Teresa of Avila is known for her profound spiritual experiences and writings, such as The Interior Castle, which describes the soul's journey through various stages of prayer, leading to divine union. Many indigenous traditions incorporate mystical elements that connect individuals with the natural world and spiritual realms through rituals, visions, and shamanic practices. Shamanic practices. Shamans act as intermediaries between the human and spiritual worlds, engaging in rituals and ceremonies to heal, gain insight, and connect with the divine forces of nature. These mystical traditions reveal the universal human longing for a direct, transformative encounter with the divine or ultimate reality. They highlight the diversity of spiritual practices and experiences across different cultures and religious traditions, each offering unique paths to mystical insight and union with the sacred. Mystical theology delves deeply into the nature of God and the human experience of the divine. Mystics often describe God in ways that transcend traditional theological concepts, emphasizing personal and direct encounters with the divine, transcendence and immanence. Mystics often speak of God as both transcendent and immanent. Transcendence refers to God's otherness, being beyond and above creation, while immanence refers to God's presence within creation and the soul. Mr. Eckhart, Christianity. He speaks of the Godhead as utterly transcendent and beyond all human understanding, while emphasizing that God is present in the depths of the soul. Sufi mysticism, Islam. Sufis describe God as both al-Batin, the hidden, and al-Zahir, the manifest, highlighting the dual aspect of divine transcendence and immanence. The divine unity and onness. Mystical theology often emphasizes God's onness and unity. Mystics experience God as an indivisible whole, where all distinctions dissolve in the presence of the divine. Advaita Vedanta, Hinduism. This non-dualistic school of thought teaches that Atman, the individual soul, and Brahman, the ultimate reality, are the same. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Ein Sof, the infinite, represents God's limitless and unified nature beyond all categories and distinctions. Love and compassion. Mystics frequently describe God as love, emphasizing the divine's intimate and relational aspects. The experience of God's love is transformative and central to mystical encounters. describes the soul's journey towards divine union as a path of love, where the soul is gradually purified and drawn into a loving relationship with God. Rumi, Sufism. His poetry speaks of divine love as the driving force of the universe, inviting individuals to become lovers of God and experience divine love's ecstasy. Mystics embrace the mystery and paradox of God's nature. They often acknowledge that human language and concepts cannot fully describe the divine, pointing to a reality that transcends rational understanding, the cloud of unknowing. This anonymous text emphasizes the importance of approaching God through love and surrender, acknowledging that God's essence is beyond human comprehension. Zen Buddhism, the concept of Mu. Emptiness in Zen points to the ineffable nature of ultimate reality, encouraging practitioners to experience enlightenment beyond conceptual thought, divine light and darkness. Mystics frequently use the imagery of light and darkness to describe God's nature. Light represents divine illumination and revelation, while darkness symbolizes God's mystery and unknowability. Saint Nadri of Nyssa speaks of the divine darkness, where the soul encounters God in a realm beyond sensory perception and intellectual comprehension. Sufism. In Islamic mysticism, the metaphor of the light of God, and Nur describes the divine presence as the ultimate source of illumination and guidance. Inner transformation. Mystical experiences often lead to profound inner transformation, where the mystic's identity and perception of reality radically alter in the encounter with the divine. Saint Teresa of Avila's work, The Interior Castle, describes spiritual awareness, growth, and transformation as the soul journeys deeper into union with God. Buddhism. The experience of enlightenment, nirvana, involves a fundamental shift in consciousness, where the practitioner realizes the true nature of reality. Theological foundations of mysticism. Theological foundations of mysticism provide the bedrock upon which mystical experiences and practices are understood and interpreted within religious traditions. These foundations encompass various theological principles, doctrines, and teachings that frame the mystical journey. The core of mystical theology is understanding God's nature as both transcendent and immanent. This duality reflects God's otherness and intimacy, emphasizing that the divine can be both beyond human comprehension and profoundly present within creation and the individual soul. Christianity, the Trinity and the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit highlight God's transcendence and immanence. Ultimate reality and Atman soul illustrate the unity of the individual self with the divine. Mystical theology often explores the relationship between the human soul and the divine, focusing on the possibility of union or communion with God. This union is seen as the ultimate goal, the mystical path. Christianity. The idea of the Osis divinization describes the process of becoming united with God, as seen in the writings of early church fathers like St. Athanasius. The concept of fana, annihilation, and baqi, subsistence, in God reflects the Sufi goal of dissolving the self to achieve union with Allah. The role of love. Divine love is a central theme in mystical theology, often seen as the driving force behind the soul's journey toward God. Mystics describe their experiences of divine love as both deeply personal and universally encompassing. Saint, his poetry and writings such as the spiritual canticle, reflect the soul's passionate love and longing for union with God. Rumi Sufism. His poems express a profound love for the divine, illustrating the soul's journey towards union with God as a lover seeking the beloved. Mystical theology outlines stages or phases on the mystical path, often including purification, cleansing the soul of sin and attachment. Also illumination, receiving divine light and understanding, and union with complete oneness with God. Prayer and contemplation are fundamental practices in mystical theology. They serve as means of encountering the divine. These practices often involve silence, meditation, and sacred texts and symbols. Lectio Divina Christiani, a contemplative practice of reading, meditating, and praying with Scripture to deepen one's experience of God's presence. The experience of divine mysteries. Mystics often encounter divine mysteries that transcend rational understanding, embracing God's paradoxes and ineffable nature. These experiences challenge and expand traditional theological categories. The Cloud of Unknowing, this anonymous text, emphasizes the mystical journey as one of loving surrender to the mystery of God beyond intellectual comprehension. Taoism. The Tao Te Ching by Lozi speaks of the Tao as an ultimate reality that cannot be fully described or understood, inviting practitioners to experience it directly. Community and tradition. Mystical theology is often rooted in and supported by religious communities and traditions. These communities provide a context for magical practice, interpretation, and transmission of teachings. Monasticism, Christianics. Monastic communities, such as those founded by Saint Benedict, offer a structured environment for contemplative practice and spiritual awareness growth. Mystical symbols and metaphors. Mystical religious traditions often use rich symbols and metaphors to express complex spiritual truths and experiences. These symbols and metaphors help convey the ineffable nature of mystical encounters, making them more accessible and relatable. Here's some prominent mystical symbols and metaphors from different traditions. The garden symbolizes paradise, spiritual awareness growth, and the soul's communion with God. It represents a place of peace, beauty, and divine presence. Christianity. The Garden of Eden represents the original state of harmony and communion with God. The tree symbolizes life, growth, and the connection between heaven and earth. It often represents the spiritual journey and the soul's growth towards divine wisdom. Christianity, the cross, often called the tree of life, represents redemption and spiritual renewal through Christ. The bride and bridegroom symbolize the intimate and loving relationship between the soul and the divine. This metaphor highlights the personal and relational aspects of mystical union. Understanding these mystical symbols and metaphors in this study can give you a deeper understanding of yourself in whatever you believe.